Good evening and welcome to the Magpie Circle, Notts County, top of the league again. If you're Aaron McLean, I wonder if he will be tweeting again. They will take some shifting. All in the Meadow Lane Garden is quite rosy after the 2-1 win at Solihull last night. Joining us, Mark Stallard again this evening. We'll be talking tonight about February. Wrexham have got in total 7 games, 5 of them at home, but we do have our noses in front. Psychologically, how important is it to keep our noses in front? Were we to win at Torquay, we don't want to be counting any chickens on Saturday, we would be 6 points clear of Wrexham when they kick off against Altrincham away. Possibly a little tricky one there in South Manchester with the televised game on Saturday. How important psychologically just to keep our noses in front? Yes, we know Wrexham have got games in hand. And Nightmare on Plainmoor doesn't hold, not I think what we would say the happiest of hunting grounds down on the Devon Riviera at Torquay away on Saturday. Hopefully we can continue our good form down there. Also talking, and I've already got a few answers from our flock in connection with how many points have Notts gained and how many points have Wrexham gained as a result of goals in the last 10 minutes of games. According to one of our followers, FM Corvidge, Wrexham have earned 9 points by scoring goals in the last 10 minutes. We have got 5 points, 2 of them welcome last night with a double penalty from Ruben. Stel, we'll read out your thoughts and messages in a moment. Stel, welcome back to the show. Pretty not in top gear, but we're getting towards the stage of the season where it's just 3 points that matter, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we said, and Luke Williams said after the game, the first half was particularly poor, sloppy, at a level we've not really seen this season, not since possibly, very early on in the season. But really, really poor. And, we could have been in more trouble than we were. And to get an equaliser in that first half, to come out of that half 1-1 was, I think Notts felt like they'd won the lottery a little bit because, Solihull were the better team, had a couple of other chances, not taken them. And so Notts got the goal, from a bit of good play, well worked routine, second phase of play, good, that little ball in the inside channel. And Kedwin Scott taking the ball well, getting his body between man and ball and winning the penalty. But they were much improved in the second half, but the first half was certainly not top gear at all. So to come out of that 1-1, they've avoided a banana skin, and you're dead right. It is all about 3 points. It's all about getting the job done. I would argue that at any stage of the season, but of course we want performance and points, but we need points. That's what it's all about. When you see Notts and Wrexham pushing as hard as they are, then you can't afford slip-ups.
Evening all from Karen Knight, Chris Gosling, Andrew Blatherwick, Ian Cooksey and Shane Walker. Dale Pike, it says at the moment Notts are averaging 2.35 points per game, which will give us 108 points if we keep going the way we are. I don't know what the exact number is, but I'm guessing at the moment Wrexham would finish above us if they replicated their points per game. Alex Jackson, evening all, huge 6 points in the last couple of games. Finding a way to win, yeah, that's one of my phrases that I've nicked from Martin O'Neill. Find a way to win. Doesn't matter whether it's just or otherwise, Alex, just find a way to win. Chris Gosling winning ugly and a comeback from behind ticks 2 big boxes for me. We need to be able to get wins in all manner of ways. Now, one of the questions I asked, and we can chat with Still about this, and I must admit, I thought this was more. It seems to me that Wrexham every other week managed to get late goals and turn draws into wins and losses into draws. And so I asked our flock at the start of the show about how many points compare Wrexham and Notts to the goals that they score in the last 10 minutes and how that changes the picture. And I've no reason to disbelieve him. FM Corvidge says that Wrexham have earned 9 points in the last 10 minutes of league games. Notts have earned 5 in the last 10. Now, I believe the 5 points that we've earned with goals in the last 10, Gateshead away, that was a horrible night, and we nicked a point there. Maidenhead, we got a late winner, and obviously last night. So that's a total of 5 points. Wrexham, by contrast, are 4 points better off in that state. 110 points, says Chris Gossin. 110 points, crikey, in a championship. Stell, I mean, is there any secret, or what characteristics would you associate with a team that nick goals in the closing stages of games? Is it luck? Is it, by design? Is it clever substitutions? Is it, tenacity? You must have played in certain teams where you conceded a lot of late goals, and then other teams where you nicked a load.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's no secret. There isn't a secret to it. It's probably a combination of a few of them things that you mentioned. But it's look, you can read anything in any which way you want to. The bit about the 9 points and the 5 points gained from goals in the last 10 minutes. You can look at that as the tenacity, the drive, the ability, the grit, the determination to go and win a game. No matter what. The fitness levels to go until the 90 plus minute. Conversely, you could look at it and say, well, Wrexham haven't been in winning positions quite a bit after 80 minutes, more than us. So do we get the job done earlier in the game? Are we not in that position to be chasing late goals as often? You can make a case for that. There's no rhyme or reason. It is about getting there when the ref blows the final whistle, and whether it's with a goal in the last second or goal in the first second, it really doesn't matter. But to have that, you've got to have quality, you've got to have fitness levels, you've got to have ability, drive, all the things we've said about. But I think, at this sort of level, I think it shows that there is that will to win, that desire to get over the line, to get the job done. Say at any cost, but it's to keep going and not accepting a point. And I think you just got to look at the table, look at the form, look at any of the stats, and say that Notts and Wrexham are two of the teams, particularly in this division, that are not accepting of a point at any stage. We're unbeaten in 20, yet the last couple of draws that we've had have felt like defeats. And I'm sure Wrexham, feel a draw is exactly the same. So, the standard is very high. And I think both teams know that you've got to keep going and look for them 3 points in every single game.
Before I forget, I will answer. Hang on, I've lost it. Gary Midgley's question: what season is the shirt from, Paul? Yeah, this is actually was Damien Stewart's shirt, Jamaican international, big bloke. It's still very tight on me, unfortunately. This was I think Notts County's first shirt, or one of the early shirts that they used when they were first founded, and the club made a replica. It was about 2012, 2013, something to do with the 150th anniversary. Right, okay. What have we got here? Chris Garson says Notts have only been training in games for 150 minutes this season. Wow. Credit Notts County Stats for the info. That's a stat. 150 minutes we've been behind. Incredible. That level of resilience still doesn't guarantee promotion. What else? James Ford. The subs really helped change the game last night. John Bostock gave much more control in midfield, and Jones linked up more with Naman to free up Langstaff more. Badge wasn't quite on it, I didn't think. Gary Smither says Wrexham much more direct than Notts, more longer balls, physical side, long throw, Doc, Otts. Andrew Blatherwick, it's getting to the point where winning is crucial. Can't let goal difference become a distraction if we're only one goal up. Can't afford to drop points to a late sucker punch. Gary Smithers, the racecourse is like a ploughed field compared to Meadow Lane. Chris, yes, James Bostock was brilliant when he came on. Credit where it's due. Chris Jordan, bearing in mind the draws we've had recently, it's great to have us back to winning ways, regardless of how we do it. Someone from Athenian Pie is quoting, I don't know, Greeks or Cyrillic to me. Slightly late entry to the race. I have no idea what that is, Athenian. That educate me. I am a simple man. Rich Hawksworth. I'd still love a big man to mix it up front. That's probably quite a good cue, Stel. We heard Luke last night on BBC Radio Nottingham interview talking about, I think the phrase was in talks with a couple of players. We've seen Wrexham this week sign a guy from Charlton. I think he played 20 games in League One. So they've certainly moved very quickly given the injuries they picked up in the FA Cup. How important do we make further additions to Geordie Jones?
Well, he says he was close to one or two, wasn't he? But
yeah,
like you alluded to, until they're over the line, you never know. Look, you're coming down to the stretch now, aren't we? The season finishes last week of April, so we're down to the last 3 months now. You want to make sure that you're not panicking at any stage. So I think it wouldn't surprise me if one more came in. How desperate it is. It's not desperate, but it's always just in case, as has happened to Wrexham. They lose two centre halves in the first 15 minutes of the game against Sheffield United the other night. Yeah, okay, they've gone out and bought, and they've got the money from the cup run as well as their Hollywood owners anyway to go and strengthen. So they've acted quickly. They've obviously had that sort of lined up anyway. But you don't want to leave yourself short at any point. You've got to try, as difficult as it is, to try and cover every base possible. Injuries, any loss of form, anything, and make sure you've got cover for every position. You just never know. It's next to impossible to know what's around the corner, but you have to cover. So I wouldn't be surprised if at least one more came in. But again, how desperate is it? I don't think it's absolutely essential it happens this week. It's more desperate that it is the right person, as we've been saying all season.
We're fairly well off, I think it's fair to say, in the midfield third. Would you be expecting the talks and the chats about potential new addition or additions to be either strengthening the back line or giving another option up front?
Well, I think you always want goal scorers, don't you? I mean, the problem is at this stage of the season, the type of goal scorers that become available are either unproven or out of form. Obviously not getting a game at a club because it's outside the transfer window now. So it's very difficult, really, to have a proven success story or somebody that you can come in and think, well, he's definitely going to score goals for us. He's definitely going to be, something. And again, you're not looking maybe to replace anybody straight away. So whoever comes in has got to bide his time. Jody Jones comes in, with experience of the Championship, League One, and he sat on the bench and he's got to bide his time because nobody's walking straight into Nott's team with the run that they're on, 20 games unbeaten, winning 15 of the 20. So, that's a difficult one as well. Possibly wing-back cover, possibly. But then, I think Jody Jones could provide that if necessary. So it's hard to really pin down. I think we've got decent cover all over. But again, without a crystal ball to know who, if anybody, is going to get injured, and I'm touching wood that nobody does, it's really hard to say. But look, people who put the ball in the back of the net, that is what wins you stuff. So look, we'd always like another goal scorer. I'm not dissimilar to the guy. I would like another option, a bit of a big physical presence. But again, does that fit into the Luke Williams style of play? Not really. But if needs must, maybe it's difficult, very difficult. Last 10, 15 minutes, but then who's going to come to maybe be a last 10, 15-minute option? So very difficult. But I think, they've obviously identified targets. And, he says they're close to maybe two. So we will watch that space.
Chris B says, I'd like to see a more adventurous left wing back come in, similar to you, Stel, or in terms of cover. Chicks is solid, but the difference in threat posed between right and left is massive. Chris Gosling says, Toby at left wing back rather than right would be worth a look. Dallas would be ideal, said Matt Pigeon. Yeah, there's been a lot of chat about that. Peter Hollingsworth, is Chickson fully fit? Doesn't look as potent as he was earlier in the season. Ian Cooksey, McShane at Dorking would be worth a punt. Dale Pikett adds, according to the local paper in Wrexham, they say that Hayden is out for 6 weeks and Tunnicliffe for the rest of the season. Obviously they've moved very quickly to shore that back line up with Owen Codland from Charlton, have Wrexham. Rich Hawksworth says a different dimension required up front. Gary Mitchell says Jody Jones looked amazing last night. I'll tell you one player. And if I was looking at kind of the first, the last 4 weeks of the campaign, maybe a bit longer, I would say he's probably been our most effective performer. And I don't think you would have always said that, would be Aaron the Man. Has given us a lot of options and seems to kind of be that out ball to turn opposition back lines and put those balls in. And, I think he's, in terms of his overall contribution, I think he's come on in leaps and bounds in the last few weeks still.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think he's been a fantastic outlet for Notts. His pace, obviously, and the service. It's all got to go hand in glove. The two got to go together. But pace is always a weapon if it can be utilised, and then it's about end product, end delivery. But I think Aaron, say he's improved. He's looked potent in recent weeks. I think he's had a really good season. Yes, I agree. Probably become a bit more prominent as the season's gone on, but I think that probably comes from feeling part of it, a bit of confidence, knowing the position better, knowing your role in the team, and being that supply line for Notts. It's interesting, isn't it? The sort of difference between the right wing back and left wing back that we have, where people are saying there about Chicks is not your speed merchant who's going to get to the byline all the time with his pace, and maybe not so much of an outlet, but maybe part of that is he's got more goals in him. That's why, the man's been getting to the byline. That's why Chickson's got 8 in total, 7 in the league, and Aaron's only got 2 goals. Maybe there's a little bit of, but that's not to say Adam Chickson doesn't put his fair share of balls into the box, and he's got decent delivery as well. So, like I say, I don't see a problem with them two as first choice wing backs at all. I just, you might want to look at the cover options potentially. Toby Adebayo-Rolling has done well when he's got in. He's not had too much game time, but he's not been in the 16 the last few games either. I know he's had a bit of a knock, I think, as well. But is that an area that it's so vital as well in the way that we set up and in modern football? Completely ever since Man City paid 50 odd million for Kyle Walker, it sort of highlighted the importance of Kyle Walker was then a right back, wasn't he? Really. Of a speed merchant, if you like, or somebody who can get up and down and do the defensive role and the attacking role. It's a vital position in modern football, wing backs, and they cover a hell of a lot of ground. So you're potentially covering for fatigue, injuries, things like that. You don't need that position to be short.
So let's move on to this Notts Wrexham debate. Now then, plenty of watchers, viewers, and listeners tonight. Give us your honest assessment, and it might even be Chesterfield, it might even be Woking. Who do you think? So ping them, get on fingers on keyboards. Who do you think, hand on heart or hand on head, perhaps, is going to win the shootout between ourselves and Wrexham? Possibly Chesterfield, massive outsider Woking. So get tapping away. Wrexham, Notts, or someone else, and it'd be interesting to see what we all say. I'm always reminded of the game against Grimsby last year in the playoffs, when I couldn't, on the face of it, we were favourites, but I couldn't really find a single Notts fan who I was talking to who thought we were ever going to win that game. A bit like Harry Kane, the second penalty, against France. Everyone I spoke to, oh no, we knew he was never going to score. Stel, we hear a lot about Wrexham, money, squad depth, etc., etc., etc. How much of that is an advantage over Notts?
The money is an advantage. You will travel the length and breadth of the globe to find a football manager that says, no, don't give me any money for players. I like to work with what I've got. They all want more money. Doesn't automatically bring success, can bring problems, but if it's done right and it's spent well, then it gives you a big advantage, because you can attract players that other clubs can't. And this O'Connell is perhaps a case in point. They can go into League One and take a player who's played fairly regularly or fairly consistently at that level, as they have done with numerous other players that we all know they've done, and bring them down to the National League level. Doesn't mean it's going to work. Doesn't mean that player's going to fit in. It's not guaranteed at all. But it certainly gives you an advantage. Absolutely gives you an advantage. Whether you can capitalise on that advantage, that's the big thing that we're fighting for. And as Notts are showing, look, this isn't David and Goliath. We aren't doing Notts are doing it on a shoestring and Wrexham are spending millions. It's not that far different but there is a notable difference. The difference is absolutely paper thin. It's hard to see. You can't really see. They've been neck and neck vying for it pretty much all season. And I think they'll go on vying for it now, probably all season, right until certainly that game on Easter Monday, and then probably and possibly beyond that. It's going to be nip and tuck. You can't see. I mean, the standard is so high in terms of winning games, consistency of winning games and getting points, that you can't see either team falling by the wayside, certainly. So it gives them an advantage, in terms of, the players, the individuals that they can attract with, maybe proven track records, whereas we've had to be a bit more shrewd, a bit cleverer, and find players. But I think that's just more power to the elbow of Luke Williams, that he's got, I said, a lesser bunch of players. I'm not saying that at all. There's some really decent players who've played at good levels there, but I think what he's got out of him, I think Luke Williams is getting the maybe not on last night's performance, but throughout the season, he's getting the maximum out of Notts. Wrexham have paid a lot of money to match them. They're not bettering them particularly at the minute. The league table will say if they win the 2 games in hand, they're 3 points clear, but that's next to nothing over best part of 30 games. So money gives you an advantage, but again, Notts are as good. Matching them all season have been better than, I'm sure. And I haven't seen the Wrexham games, but I'm going to be biased, obviously. But I'm sure the level that Notts have reached earlier this season has not been surpassed by anybody, including Wrexham, in this division.
Playing devil's advocate, Stel, when we talk about money being an advantage, this is Notts' 4th season in the National League. First season, Barrow won it. Doubt they were even halfway in terms of budget. Doubt they were halfway. Season 2, let's get this right, Sutton United won it. Doubt they were even halfway when it came to budget. Season 3, Stockport. Yeah, Stockport and Wrexham would have been the 2 big spenders. Yeah. So in very, very recent history, money has been shown that to win the title, it's not been an absolutely, well, it's not been a prerequisite, has it? And Notts can't control Wrexham's results. Yeah. And I'm sure Luke Williams is saying the one thing we can control is our own results. Money in itself, and you mentioned that, Wrexham have to capitalise on it. But, when we look back at Notts teams in the past that have won championships, you've got to believe in yourselves and not, and I'm sure Notts players don't. I'm sure Luke Williams don't. We have a healthy banter, call it what you will, with Wrexham, but we control our own destiny. We can't affect what Wrexham do, and as Wrexham showed last year, Grimsby showed it, didn't they? And they cracked.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, this isn't David and Goliath. It's Goliath and slightly smaller Goliath. Yeah, So, of course, Notts players believe in themselves. You know, they wouldn't be where they are now if they didn't believe in themselves. Can they do it? Of course they can do it. We are not talking, again, we're not talking about playing Brazil or, Argentina who just won the world.
Exactly.
You know,
Yes.
we're talking about a good Wrexham, an excellent Wrexham team. But we're talking about an excellent Notts team who've just broken the club record, all-time league record for unbeaten games. I mean, we're talking about two excellent teams and closely followed by some pretty good Chesterfield and Woking and Barnet teams, behind that. But they are just the 29 games that we've played so far shown that Notts and Wrexham are just out there ahead of the bunch. But, no team is unbeatable, despite what the records say and the stats and the 3 defeats between us and Wrexham all season. They are beatable if they don't turn up, if they don't play, if the pressure gets too much, if, that's the beauty with football, where you just never know. And it's all about between now and what's gone is gone. That's in the history books. It's all about what's coming up, what the future. That's the only thing that can affect. And you say Notts will concentrate on their own thing like they have done all season, and they will carry on doing that. And they've got to maintain the standards. They've got to keep the standards high, because every game represents a challenge, but so it does for Wrexham and every opponent that they will face. So, look, it's so tough to call with the way things are stood at the minute, and the beauty is that all them top teams have still got to play each other. And we know we've got that bank holiday Monday or the Easter Monday game at Wrexham. I mean, that could be an absolute classic for the ages, couldn't it? But it's it's mouth-watering. But there's a lot of water to go under the bridge between now and then, and we'll talk about the remaining fixtures in February for both teams. So look, it's brilliant. It's an unbelievable standard that they're setting, and the way it's going, you almost said that may the best team win, as long as it's not.
Okay, loads of comments. Here they all are. Who's going to win this race? Gary Smithhurst, Wrexham. Andrew Blatherwick, Wrexham. Alex Jackson, Notts. Ian Cooksey, Notts by 3 points. Chris B, Wrexham. Matt Pigeon, Notts will win it at the racecourse. Rich Hawksworth, Wrexham to win the league. The way they play is easier to replicate game after game. Shane Walker, Wrexham. Chris Gosling, I think we have three very tricky fixtures coming up. We'll go through the fixtures in February very shortly. Notts, we're going to beat them away, and that will finish them off, hopefully. Chris Gosling, just to be pushing Wrexham like we are is some achievement. Joseph Spinks, heart says Notts, but head says Wrexham. Dale Pikett, the game on Easter Monday could decide which way the title goes. Andrew Blatherwick points out Chesterfield are at Boreham Wood this weekend. Duncan Connery, my heart says Notts, but head says Wrexham. They just seem to be able to pinch wins from nowhere. Chris Gosling, it's a shame Altrincham have lost their 3 best players in Jan just before they play Wrexham. I had that down as a potential banana skin for them. Ian Cooksey, the team spirit at Notts is the biggest factor. ZO, is 3rd place up for grabs, or do Chesterfield have that covered? Possibly still pushing us and Wrexham. Stuart Dakin, all depends on the 3 matches that the top 3 play against each other. I think Chesterfield will finish 3rd. Result at racecourse is likely pivotal. What else have we got? Chris Gosling, no one will come close to challenging the current top 2 of that, I'm sure. Chris B says, only hope is that Wrexham choked on both big occasions last season, trophy final and playoff. Hopefully we can keep pressure on them for the title. Athenian Pie, one thing to note is Wrexham have hit a century in this league and failed. Do either of you think Ruben is going? We'll have a quick chat about that later in the programme. Rich Hawksworth, if we win the league this year, despite it being the lowest level we have ever played, it will be one of the biggest achievements in our history, given Wrexham's resources. Andrew Blatherwick, it's not how much money you have, it's how well you spend it. Chris B, I think Wrexham money is levels above the money clubs in the other years. We've been down here. Chris Gosling, agree, Dale. Both teams going up is the outcome this season deserves. With Wrexham, they have been done by hitting a century of points in this league before. Do either of you feel this could go head to head at the end to decide? Not by a gallop, says Steve Cartwright. There you are. Nail your colours to the mast, Steve. Peter Hollingsworth. Wrexham's amount of games will catch up with them. Zedo. Wrexham just had injuries to 2 first-choice defenders. They've covered 1 with new signing. Injuries for either side could swing it. Hart says, draw at Wrexham and we win title the week after. There we go. Right. So that's lots of comments there. Let me just pull up pictures. Let's have a look. So we spoke about January and all the rest of it. Here, just so we've got like a bit of a ready reckoner for February, are Wrexham's and our fixtures. So Wrexham Saturday away at Altrincham. We are away at Torquay. Following weekend, Wrexham are at home to Wealdstone. We go to Chesterfield. The midweek, on the 14th, both playing Valentine's night. Oh dear. Woking at home for Wrexham, home for Barnet for us. That's an interesting one. Feb 18, Aldershot away for Wrexham, Yeovil away for us. February the 21st, that's another midweek. Scunthorpe at home for Wrexham, Southend at home for us. Feb 25th, Dorking at home for Wrexham, Dagenham at home for us. And then as it stands, Wrexham will be finishing the month in midweek. We wouldn't be playing with a game against Chesterfield. So takeaways from those games. Wrexham play 7, we play 6. 5 of those 7 for Wrexham are at home. But I want to talk still. We're 3 points clear. We go to Torquay. Psychology, mentality. Were we to beat Torquay, we would then go 6 points above Wrexham just before they kick off their game on the telly at 5:20 or whatever it is on BT Sport. So they would then have 3 games in hand, but would be 6 points behind. How important, given that throughout this month, or at least till the last game in the month, it will be a level number of games played. How important, psychologically, mentally, do you think, is it for Notts to keep in front of Wrexham and preferably as big a points gap as possible?
Yeah, well, of course, yeah. I mean, it's stating the obvious, isn't it? But it's not dissimilar to a penalty shootout, is it? It's the way it is this Saturday. We get to take first. We get our chance to get on the board at Torquay. So, you know, but again, you've got to reiterate the fact that the players won't be. They'll just be seen as another game to win. They've got to go and win, like they had to go and win against Solihull last night. They're going down to Torquay on Saturday with the aim to go and win the game, and they know anything less than that is, you know, a step backwards, if you like. So, you know, but they get the chance to do it. Then, you know, should they win the game and go 6 points clear, then that just increases the little bit of pressure that's on Wrexham, because they know, 6 points with 3 games, we can't really afford a slip up. So it can just be a little bit of tit for tat, a little bit of cat and mouse sort of games. But absolutely vital that Notts do the business, because the opposite of that is true. If Notts don't get 3 points, Wrexham go, hello, they've slipped up again. And just takes a little bit of, here's a chance to really go and take a big chunk into that lead and claw back into it. So it's going to seesaw backwards and forwards, that is, for the next 3 months, you know, from game to game, week to week. You know, you went through the games there and you said, well, you know, Wrexham have got 7. They've got 8 games, haven't they? They've got the Sheffield United replay as well.
Yes, they've got that.
Yeah. But they've got 8 games to play. Now, does that catch up with them at some point? Playing Saturday, Tuesday for the whole of this month, whereas Notts will get a breather in a midweek. You know, does that have a part to play with it? So it's always the momentum is going to swing slightly. The psychology is going to change. You know, it's like I say, nip and tuck. It really is. But again, it's always vital. Do your job. Notts need to go to Torquay, win the game, get the 3 points, and the ball is back in the Wrexham court. Down to you. Like I say, they've been slogging it out for the last 4 or 5 months. I don't see anything changing in the next 3 months, to be honest. I think they're going to slog it out all the way down the stretch. And I say, hopefully Notts do the job on Saturday, and then it's over to Wrexham.
Indeed. Ian Cooksey, he's typed this out twice because I didn't read it out the first time, so apologies. If we score Saturday, we will break another record. It will be the 22nd consecutive away game we have scored in. Keep smashing those records. Chris Gosling, if Wrexham beat Sheffield United, they'll lose another fixture this month. I think if I've got it right, Chris, the next round of the FA Cup comes on the first weekend of March. So that's when potentially they would lose another game on us. There's real irony to this, is that we hope Wrexham lose every league game, but I'm sure we're all rooting for Wrexham to win the FA Cup, aren't we? I'm sure we're all rooting. If Wrexham get to the final of the FA Cup, we're with them, eh? We're with them. Stuart Dakin says, it's the last time we scored 2 penalties in the same league match. Against Huddersfield at home on the 29th of March 2003. We won 3-2. Who scored them penalties, Stel?
Was it me? It wasn't me.
Well, according to Stuart Dakin, it is. I have no idea
whether
it's right or not. He says here you scored in the 71st and 90th minutes to secure a 3-2 win.
Both penalties, did I? I thought that, do you know when you talk about 2 penalties, I thought that was heading down the game, was it Barnsley, where I'd scored one and missed one. So I thought that was what we were heading towards there. That was going to be the punchline. Well, I'll take I'll take the word for it. I don't remember, but yeah.
Even in National League, because we've got a lot of goals, I'm trying to think now. We've not had anyone score 2 penalties in a game. It's a long time, isn't it? 19 years. No wonder you couldn't remember it.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I can't remember a lot about Mike. We must have had 2 penalties scored, surely, in the last.
Wouldn't you?
But like I say, you've got to look at when we're not have lots of attacking. I'm thinking of Hughes's sort of the League 2 season.
Seasons, yeah.
But yeah, maybe not.
Zedo says records are great, but really think this is not like any other season. Don't get distracted. Concentrate on the game in hand and keep pushing. On the subject of penalty, makes me smile. Harry Kane, you shouldn't get a penalty taker to take the second penalty in the same game. Blah 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 blah. Fair play to Ruben. Yeah, put him in different parts of the goal. Both good strikes, weren't they? The guy next to me, Richard Stanton, thought for a second it was going over the bar, but unstoppable pen, wasn't it? Unstoppable.
Oh, it was great second penalty. I mean, we actually could see the second one. We were looking around a great big bloody bollard at Solihull Moors for the first one. In nightmare position where we were commentating from, but look, any penalty that hits the back of the net is a good penalty, isn't it? So, for me, you can overthink it, overanalyze a penalty. There's 2 outcomes: you score or you don't. That's it. And thankfully, last night, Ruben hit the back of the net with both of them. But I don't buy. I mean, you're going back to Harry Kane. I don't buy into this. Don't get a penalty taker to take a second penalty. I mean, like I say, that for me is overthinking stuff.
Yeah, well, Mbappe did all right for France in the final. Richard Hawksworth says Super Trevor Christie slotted away plenty of penalties back in the Neolithic age. Yes, in the glorious 80s. In the glorious 80s. Torquay United. Yeah, trips to the Devon Riviera. Not exactly got a lot out of him in recent times. Was it 5 we let him down there last year? It was, wasn't it?
Yeah, 5-1, wasn't it? And that was obviously far and away the worst performance I think we had under Ian Birchnell. But oh dear, awful.
Do you ever subscribe to the theory there are some grounds you go to where you seem to do well, and others where it always seems there's a little hoodoo sign on you?
Believe me, from the bits I can remember, I had loads of grounds that had hoodoo over me. Don't worry about that. Look, yes, it can happen, but again, I think Luke Williams is a breath of fresh air for Notts in that he dismisses all that sort of talk, and he's right to. You know, after your career, you look back and go, well, we haven't won here for X amount of years, but all these runs are made to be broken, aren't they? It's just circumstances that lead
Yeah,
up to these sort of peculiarities, these statistical oddballs, if you like. So, look, there's nothing in it, and certainly not when you're playing. Our Notts are this season. But there's no guarantees. Again, there's no guarantees. It's you've got to go every time. Every game is a new chance where everyone starts from scratch and you've got to perform again. But this is a different Notts team going down to Torquay this season with a different mentality and a different leader. And the prize is obviously far more glittering ahead of them. So look, that's no guarantee of what's going to happen. But I don't think they'll be worried about previous history at Plainmoor. They'll judge it like any other game they've approached this season. And apart from that Dorking one, they've approached every one of them in the right frame of mind.
Good point, well made, Ian Cooksey and Alex Jackson. Ian says Eastleigh and Aldershot put to bed this season. That's very true, actually. Torquay next. Alex Jackson. Eastleigh and Aldershot results show we seem to be moving on from these dips in form away from home at tricky grounds. Dale Pike, the season before at Torquay, we were 2 up and only drew 2-2 with them scoring 2 late goals. Chris Gosling, Torquay got a credible draw at Woking last night, but won the 2 games before that. Athenian Pie, I remember JD Weatherspoons needing a restock for the Champions Party, even if it was a nothing game in League 2. Yeah, that would be 13 years ago. Something like that. Yeah. Last game of the season, Nico had to give a guard that was in the Torquay side that gave a guard of honour to the Notts players running out. He wasn't very happy about that.
I can imagine.
I guess Torquay also are a salutary lesson, Stalin. They had a wonderful season and you can go so close, but it cannot, and not so much for the really big clubs, I guess. But Torquay are a decent sized club. I mean, it unravelled so quickly for them after they went so close, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And you could almost argue last night's opponents, can't you? Solihull. I think we all expected that. I certainly did. And I still expect them to come good because I think they've made a couple of decent additions and I think they've had 1 or 2 injuries. But, them being in the playoff final last year, getting very close, taking the lead and then getting pegged back. I think from a practical level, what it does, it sort of takes a month out your season, doesn't it? Or a month out of your recruitment summer. So it gives everyone else's season's finished. They've got a chance to do their business. When you're in the playoffs and you go to the final, obviously that takes longer. It's a couple of weeks beyond the semi-final, usually, or 10 days after the last of the semi-finals. You don't know what division you're in. So you cannot make concrete offers on contracts and things like that. And things just seem to be a little bit more up in the air for longer. So other clubs get a bit of a head start on contracts, players that are available. And obviously players, if they're nervous at this sort of level, they're not going to hang around too long on the off chance of a club maybe getting promoted or not getting promoted if they get an offer from somewhere else. So by being in the playoffs and getting to the final, I imagine you miss out on a fair few targets because they've got a little bit nervous and signed for somebody else if they've got another offer. So I think that's the practical reason why it can be a bit, the hangover as they call it, don't they? But I think there's a more practical reason as to why it can happen. Obviously, it doesn't always happen, but I think if that is it, then that for me would be the main factor in it.
Good point as well from Ian Cooksey. Halifax and Solihull both finished above us last season, and in that category, you would absolutely put Halifax. They lost the manager, and clearly it's been a very, very tough act for them to follow since losing Peter Wild went to Barrow, didn't he?
Barrow, yeah. And he took Billy Waters, didn't he?
Yeah, and they quite literally have fallen apart this season, haven't they, compared to where they were last campaign?
Yeah, but again, you look into it a little bit. They've lost a few players in the summer as well, some decent players. because, as ever in the National League, if you don't get promoted, anybody who looks half decent will get cherry picked by other clubs, higher up the pecking order. It's amazing to see how many players who've played in the National League don't get promoted, and you see them playing in the league or popping up doing things in higher divisions because individually they've been picked out of it. And I think the one that everyone maybe have in mind is Christian Dennis at the top of the League Two sort of scoring charts for Carlisle. Yet Cater not scored goals, but never prolifically how we really thought he perhaps would at that level. So, but there's numerous ex-Notts players playing in the league now, but couldn't get success with Notts, couldn't get Notts out of the National League, but have individually been taken out of the National League by other means.
Dale Pike, it says 0-0 in that game at Torquay when we won the title. I even managed to get on the pitch after the game, like many Notts fans did. I think there were more Notts fans on the pitch than in the stand, from what I can remember of that day. Ian Cooksey, we won 1 out of 4 games against those two teams last season. This season we've won all 4. I think he's talking there about Eastleigh and Aldershot. Andrew Blatherwick, Halifax lost their manager and a couple of players to Barrow. 2 away games still. We've got Chesterfield coming up round the corner. They took a heavy defeat, didn't they, at the weekend? Do you still consider, or do you think this is more than a 2-horse race? Or do you think Notts and Wrexham are, barring a miracle, going to fill the top 2 positions?
Well, I said it was a 3-horse race before Saturday's game. And then, like you say, Barnet, who are vastly improved, and they're one to watch. Not, I think they're too far behind to come and catch us or Wrexham, but they are vastly improved team. And obviously we've got them in a 2 weeks' time. So that's going to be, well, it's the, Valentine's Day game, isn't it? Tuesday night. So they are a massively improving team, and one maybe to watch. Not dissimilar to how Southend were. Remember when we played them down there, Southend with a good run of form?
A little bit, because you thought they would have a big push, didn't you, at that point?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think their off-field situations may be taking its toll on them. But Barnet, they're always a bit of a funny team, aren't they, Barnet? Because they were up here, was it 2 seasons ago in the playoffs when we beat them in the playoffs?
That's it.
And then poor last season. So, but they're coming strong. They conceded a lot of goals early on in the season, but they've hardly conceded any in recent games. They've tightened up and, say, 3-0 against Chesterfield with Kabamba, who's banging form. So they're not going to be easy. So they're one to watch. But to answer your question, I think realistically with Chesterfield losing, I think with Shamanga going, I think you could just about, you can't rule them out. Of course you can't. You don't know. We've got to play, and that they could upset us. They could upset Wrexham at the end of the month. But I think they're a little bit of a way back now for it to be considered anything other than a 2-horse race, a serious 2-horse race.
Andrew Blatherwick, on the subject of hangovers, we had a hangover after we lost to Bradford City, a team that included Mark Stallard, I believe, in 1995, 96-ish. I think we got relegated the following season or narrowly avoided it. Chris Gosling adds, yes, I think we went down. That was the season Big Sam came in and didn't win in something like his first 15 to 20 games. Would have been sacked in more modern times. Dale Pike, it says we're 29 points in front of the last playoff place. Hang on. So we are 29 points ahead of 7th stroke 8th. 29! It's unbelievable, isn't it? Unbelievable.
Well, I think on that, I did have a look at this the other day, and I think 74 was the cut-off for the playoffs, and we're obviously on 68 now. So we're 2 wins away from arguably securing a place in the playoffs with 17 games remaining. So, the ridiculousness of the stats can just keep coming out of what they've achieved so far this season, albeit they've achieved absolutely nothing. But the stats just are phenomenal. Whichever way you look at them, it's been an incredible effort, and the consistency has just been unbelievable.
Duncan Conry says Christian Dennis was never given a decent run in the team at Notts. He was a bit in and out, if I remember right. I think he got injured in the first season when he came in the Football League. Okay, coming up to sort of closing stages of the programme. Will you be making a trip down to Torquay? Well, of course you'll be making a trip down to Torquay, Stel.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it is, and I think we're going down on the day as well. So it's a
Yeah.
long one. Yeah, like everyone else. Yeah, I think we are. So it's a
Is
long day,
Charlie
like
back to
everybody
return to his
else.
old stamping ground, or was it Dave?
As of last night, Charlie's doing it, but these things can change at last minute, unbelievably, with the BBC and Sky and things like that. So obviously Dave does a bit for Sky, doesn't he? So yeah, depending on their employers. But Charlie said it was him last night, so yeah, I just show up and see whoever's in the car alongside me.
Yeah. Look, 3 points last night. Did it surprise you? Because that was probably at the back, it's probably as shaky as we've looked. I think you mentioned earlier, as shaky as we've looked, really, wasn't it? We didn't look good defensively, I thought, last night.
No, yeah, we didn't. We were sloppy, and we created our own problems a lot of the time. I think Andrew Dallas caused problems with his channel running,
Yeah,
running
he
in
did
behind.
run well. He did run well.
Yeah, but like we've said many a time this season, not to prevent that by keeping the ball. Last night, the amount of times that we gave the ball away sloppily. I mean, the goal. Everyone can see that. I think when you have a look at the highlights, the goal
Yeah, as
came
Kyle got
from
caught in
the
possession, didn't
skipper,
he? Yeah.
being sloppy with the ball, caught in possession. But before that, there'd been 4 or 5 times. Aidan Baldwin, whose distribution is usually
Yes.
really good. Connell was wayward with his passing. 1 or 2 others as well. Under very little pressure, and that's not like Notts. But if you do that, if you give the ball away, you give anybody a chance, whoever you're playing against. And then you do get exposed because of the way Notts play. They like to play. They like to make the pitch big when they're in possession of the ball. So if you give it away cheaply, the opposition is right on you, and it can be man for man. 3v3, 3v2, even for the goal. So you've got to take care of the ball. That's what it's one of the big things in football. You've got to take care of the ball. Love the ball. Don't give it away cheap. And last night, I think, is the most often in a half of football that I think I've seen Notts give the ball away cheaply. Of course, we do. We've done it throughout the season on odd occasions, but last night was the first time really I've seen us give the ball away lots of times in our own half needlessly, and then it causes problems. It will do. In the second half, they were much better, much tidier, much more accurate in the passing, and bar the one-on-one in the first 10, 15 seconds of the half,
Yeah.
I don't remember them really undoing us too much.
Big debate on penalties. A lot of Notts fans point out the number of penalties that Wrexham get. We got a couple last night. I don't think you could ever see a more stonewall penalty than the first one on Kedwin.
No.
The second one, I mean, I was sat in the seats on the far side. I mean, yeah, it's a foul, but I'm not sure they always give that. Anywhere else on the pitch, it's always given, but I'm not sure referees always give those in the box to the away team.
On the radio last night, we sort of said, well, it looked a bit soft, but it was good play by Notts, taking the corner quickly, realising Matty Palmer was sort of goal side. They'd switched off a little bit. A good play from Matty Palmer. Put yourself between your opponent and the ball, and if he wants to come in. Now, I've seen it again, and I'll be honest, it looks more of a penalty now seeing it again than it did on the night, because we were the opposite side and low down, so we're looking sort of through the defender, through Matty Palmer to the ball, and you couldn't tell how much contact there'd been, whether he just felt a little bit of a touch and gone down on the ball and the ref gave the penalty. But seeing it again, it's clumsy from the lad. It's not a stone wall penalty by any stretch. And I'm like you, the fact that we'd already had one given, the fact that we're away from home, the fact that it was 1-1, it's the sort of decision that you've seen refs sort of bottle, for want of a better word. And so credit to the ref, he gave it. It was a penalty. Looking at it again, it was a penalty. But, in terms of penalties that are given, I would say it's probably given 60 to 70% of the times. And a lot of the times it's perhaps easy not to give, easy just to wave it away and say not enough contact. But, credit to Notts for and this is something I think I've noticed recently, is that they've made a definite move to try and set pieces, get the ball in play quickly, hand on play, nearest man, hand on play. If there's something on, don't allow the opposition to get set up, get organised, and that way, like I say, decision making at this level can go awry, and that's what proved the undoing last night. If Adam Chickson doesn't take the corner quickly, that might not happen. You never know.
Ian Cooks, he says, good refereeing last night for both sides, and adds, in contrast to Saturday. Athenian Pie says, last night we didn't touch the ball for the first 25 minutes at least, and the positive was that we were good to chase, and it was actually nice to see how we run without it. To Chris Gosling, agree with that, Ian, on the ref, one of the better ones we've seen. Did anyone see Mark White's ref rant after the Dorking loss on Saturday? Ian adds, the penalty decision, the second one, makes up for the one we didn't get Saturday. Refs, Stel. They are the subject of much debate, and I think it's about 99.8% derogatory towards them. Look,
where's the 0.2% for them? I've not
probably
seen
me. As an ex-pro, I mean, do you think there is a serious tail-off or an unacceptable tail-off in the quality of refereeing from League 2, which is part of the Professional Football League setup, to National League, National Division level?
It's a difficult question to answer because obviously I've not seen any League 2 football.
But when we're watching League 2 with knots and things like broadly speaking.
Look, I think the officiating falls in line with the standard of play in terms of the best ones go to the top. The lower down you get less good refereeing, less good officiating. There's a pecking order in officiating, just like there's a pecking order in playing. If your ability level only takes you playing wise to the National League, then similarly, if your officiating level only takes you to the National League, there's a reason for that. First and foremost, look, if you'd have asked me when I was a player, then I'd have been in the 99.8% without any question whatsoever. I've mellowed a little bit as I get away from the game and realise, it's a tough job they've got. I don't think they're particularly good in general in the National League. That said, and that's not just looking at Notts games, because we can all look at it with our Notts tinted specs on and go, well, that decision went against us, and it's easy for us to praise the ref last night because he gave us 2 penalties. But I think if I'm trying to be objective, if I'm trying to be fair, if I'm trying to be neutral, which is difficult, but if I'm trying to be neutral over the seasons we've been in the National League, I don't think the officiating is a lot to write home about. And I've said it on the radio. I said for the reasons being that they do not know the game, and it's not necessarily their fault. I think there's things that can be done to help referees, to get to know the cheats of the game. I don't mean individual cheats. I mean what players do. What little cheats, what little strokes they're looking to pull. They fall for them hook, line, and sinker so often. And the old adage or the old argument is get more ex-players to do it. Well, ex-players won't do it. Ex-players know how much abuse you get as a ref, so they're not going to do it. There's not going to be enough of them do it. But I must say, since we've been in the National League, I think the standard of officiating in general has been pretty poor. Not everyone, not every referee, but as a general average, it's not been great.
Yeah, I think it will be a fact. If you roll the clock forward 10, certainly 20 years, every ref in the Premier League will have come through the National League. Because there's no other route. There's no other route.
They'll probably have to,
in the National League and then and then not referee in the Football League to get to the Premier League. So the reality is, we might not think it, but we may well have watched 3 or 4 referees this season who will be Premier League refs in 10 years' time.
Yeah, but again, there's factors in that, isn't there? You know, the fact that the referee numbers are depleting because people don't want to come into it. Youngsters don't want to come into it because
Well,
the abuse
that's
they
the
get.
same argument,
So,
isn't it? But yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it's a whole different conversation that we've not got time to go into now. But I think the powers that be are going to have to change the system for officiating, and that I'm saying fast tracking officials, but the training for them and the way of getting the best referees to the best division. I mean, they do it at the minute, but with numbers dwindling, it becomes ever harder. So if you're looking at it in 20 years' time, well, you're talking about people who are maybe 20 years of age now, maybe less than that. So they're not even on their pathway hardly in officiating. But look, it's without a crystal ball, you don't know. But it's something that needs addressing. It's a problem that is, I think, developing, and it's going to develop just because the numbers that are dwindling, because they're being started out refereeing the dog and duck, where you was likely to get your car windscreens smashed in, and two teams of sort of hungover players on a Sunday morning kicking seven bells out of each other, just wanting an excuse for a fight, and that's okay. You've got to start somewhere, but that is you know that is tricky doing that. I remember when I was a player. You remember Rico, Ian Richardson.
yeah.
He did his he
Sunday
did his
mornings, what?
referees badges. He
Yeah,
did his referees badges when he was,
he did.
I'm going to say late 30s, early 30s, mid 30s, coming to whatever age he was, and I know he was in early 30s, I think 30, yeah, whatever it was, and he was telling us he used to do that. He used to have to go and referee Sunday game, and he was being sort of fast tracked a little bit, but obviously he's never become a referee of any repute, so he sacked it off pretty quickly. But he was saying, he did all sorts of ridiculous Sunday games, and it just absolutely shambolic games. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how you bring referees through and improve the standard. But that's a conversation for another day, maybe.
Yeah, I just think there's part of me says they they get an it's not undeserved, but they're not full time refs, are they, in the National League? I think that is one of the challenges. That's one of the
Yep.
challenges. They're not full time, and I think when you have 80 to 90% of the clubs in the National League, National Division, who are full time and who are properly professional, then I think the National League has to make a decision to say, right, we're going to have a pool of full time referees and we'll pay them, right? Uh, they'll have to find some money for it. But if they want, this I think it's a more expansive argument, but I think this again ties into saying we want a third spot, a promotion spot. We're going to mirror things that the Football League do: fit and proper persons test, full time officials. And it's no good saying, "Oh, well, we can't afford it." Well, how you say you want three places? Your team's coming up. It's got to be done right. So I would say that is one way in which you can potentially raise the standard of referees. Because at the minute, I think I'm right in saying they're all part time at this level. They're all
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you are right. And again, money helps solve problems, doesn't it? It's easy to sit and say, yeah, they should be full time, but they are part time with jobs. So you've then got to incentivize them to pack up their jobs to
exactly.
become full time.
Yeah,
And just like players, if you've got a decent job, they might be officiating for the love of it. It might be officiating because it's beer money essentially. It's extra spending money, not because it's the profession. The profession, they might have a decent profession earning a good amount of money that they're not going to pack up if they get the chance to go full time. So it's a difficult problem that money obviously helps. And time, it's that money and time thing. I think if they've got time, if they're full time, and I know they don't do it in the league. I've been an advocate for years for this, but why referees do not get allocated to a couple of local professional clubs and go in there regularly?
yeah,
Not saying every day, but go in there regularly and get used to what happens in professional football behind the scenes, the players in training, the tricks of the trade, learn what happens. obviously you wouldn't then referee them clubs you're allocated
They would
to.
be banned from refereeing
Do you
those
know,
clubs. Yes.
exactly. Just like you're banned from refereeing whoever you support, or things like that. So, but it's just education on any job, isn't it? You go and do work experience, or you pick up the ropes of any job. Referees go and get involved with professional footballers and find out what goes on in the game, because a lot of referees may not have played the game, certainly may not, well, definitely not played the game to any sort of standard, and won't understand what goes on a pitch when it matters, when a game's on. So, look, like I say, there's a number of reasons, a number of things that you could do. Money helps, but it's like I say, I think to encompass the whole argument, I think you're right. I think if the National League wants that extra promotion spot, they've got to become like a fifth division and give assurances along them sort of lines that you've mentioned.
Chris Gosling, the standard of refereeing is a subject that unites National League fans everywhere. We can't all be wrong. James Cooper says, I don't care if they make mistakes for individual things in a game. It's the lack of consistency that annoys me the most. If they could be more consistent on their view of a game, it would be better. Ian Cooksey, if it comes down to Wrexham v Notts at Easter, a strong referee will be needed. Indeed it will. Chris Gosling says the National League can use the money they're making from the streaming to get some full-time refs. And on the full-time streaming, I know because one or two people have been asking me, and it's not always straightforward. I know Chloe was watching the stream last night up in Burnley. It went down for a couple of minutes, I believe. There won't be a stream, he says, I'm pretty sure I'm right, from Torquay on Saturday. The ruling is that you can't stream a game on a mainstream domestic football programme at 3 o'clock. Before you all shout Aldershot, that wasn't classed as a full domestic league programme because there was an FA Cup round of fixtures. Just so we know, it's not straightforward as to work out when there's a stream and when there isn't. So obviously those not going down to Torquay will be able to listen to the dulcet tones of Stel and Zoom Charlie. That just about wraps things up. Oh, a couple of people have mentioned the John Bostock interview. Quick one, Paul. Really enjoyed John Bostock's interview. What a humble and nice guy he is. Gary Mitty, I liked it as well, Chris. I was surprised how open and honest he is. Quick plug, if you've not seen it, it's definitely worth a listen. Play it in the car, watch it on the YouTube channel, however you normally get your fix. But yeah, John spoke very, very well, and I think made a difference when he came on last night, Stel.
Yeah, I think he did. Him and Jody Jones, although they'd improved already by the time they'd come on. I think they gave him an air of calm and measuredness about the game and just continued on the front foot. I think him and Matty Palmer helped Notts control the game. I think Jody Jones showed some good little tricks and little bits of movement and that. And I think the more he gets involved, the more minutes he gets, the more he gets accustomed to the rest of the players around him. I think he could be a really good, shrewd signing.
Indeed. Safe travels to Torquay and to everyone else that's making the journey down to the Devon Riviera on Saturday. We will be back. Have we got a midweek next week?
No.
Right. We'll be back on Monday next week then, reviewing the Torquay game. Thank you, everyone, for your thoughts, views, and opinions tonight, as always. We will see you next Monday. Cheers for now. Bye-bye.
Cheers.